Hi everyone, I'm Gabe Pereira and welcome to another episode of A Modern Animal. With me, of course, the inimitable Dr Mike Woodrow, and our guest today is naturopath, herbalist, animal health specialist Narelle Cooke. Welcome, guys.
Hello,
Great
thank
to be
you.
Here. So good to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us. I know, Narelle, it's bucketing down where you are.
Yes, northwestern Sydney, so a lot of sudden rain today. Wasn't predicted, so not sure what's going on with this weather.
No, it's supposed to be summer in Australia at the moment, but I'm not 100% convinced of it.
It's going to happen. Definitely going to happen.
Now, Mike, everyone knows that you're the smartest guy in our room, but I think Narelle may possibly put you to shame today. I've been studying her bio.
Yes. Absolutely agreed. And one thing that I sacrificed the glass of water for a space on the desk for my iPad, because I thought, Narelle is going to say some things today that I need to write down, because this, Narelle, the background to this really came out of a conversation that Gabe and I had last time when we were talking about what are in some ways the eternal issues, the very modern issues that concern pet owners. What are, when I'm at a barbecue and it comes up in conversation, my background and my passion for pets, and they say, and we go through this swap, how many fur animals have you got in your family? And it pretty soon goes to, what are the joys? And also some of it was, what are the challenges? And on the surface of it, what Gabe and I agreed last week is we know a little bit, but we need to understand a lot more. There's some complexity here that is not only fascinating, but it's actually really, really important for pet parents and for them to understand. And that's why we're so happy you're here today.
Absolutely.
Okay. And sorry, Narelle, go ahead.
Oh no, a lot to live up to. That's really high expectation, guys. No pressure at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. And I mean, don't put any pressure on yourself with the fact that you're our first guest either. I mean, that's no big deal. Don't worry about it. So Narelle and I have known each other through the industry for a long period of time, and Narelle is a human naturopath, and I've actually gone to your webpage, Narelle, because I couldn't possibly remember all of your qualifications. I'm going to read them, and then I'm going to ask you to respond. So she's got a Bachelor of Health Science in Naturopathy, a Bachelor of Ag Science with honours from the University of Melbourne, Advanced Diploma in Naturopathy, Nutritional Medicine, Western Herbal Medicine, and a cert for an assessment and training. But Narelle, your passion and your specialty is actually animal medicine, right?
Yeah, and it's fascinating how it works, because I've been training and studying for so many years to be a human naturopath, nutritionist, and herbalist. And, Dr. Mike, it's like what you said. A lot of people, I would have clients, like human clients in my clinic, and I would help them with their gut issues. I'd help them with their skin issues. And then, they'd be walking out the door and they'd say, oh, by the way, my dog's got skin issues, or my dog's got gut issues. Is there anything that you can recommend for them? And this it just kept happening more often and more often. And sort of boosted by the fact that I actually live at a boarding kennel. So when people come to my clinic, they're coming onto the premises of a boarding kennel. So it sort of triggers an animal conversation, to start with. And so I'm like, oh, I've really got to, think about this. And I'm like, that's sort of when I went back and did additional studies with particularly the College of Integrative Veterinary Therapies. They're awesome. So I've done a lot of additional animal studies through them. And now, even though I'm a human naturopath, I'm an animal nutritionist. And my main focus is dogs, mainly because I have 5 of them. So it's really easy to try things out on my own dog, see what works, what doesn't, and pass that on to my clients.
Yeah. Narelle, I find that so fascinating, and imagine all of the cues that as people interact with you, the background of science and such a passion for pets, and then and doing that at such scale, both the association with that, the boarding kennel, but also there are not too many people who have 5 dogs, plus one cat.
Yep.
Any
Never
other
forget the cat.
any other members
Any
in the
other
household?
species? Any other species, or is it just and one husband as well?
Yeah, he's on the list there too. But look, I've had reptiles and parrots and all sorts of things over my time. The more the merrier, really.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's good.
I love it. So, Narelle, obviously, we could dive into almost any area of animal biochemistry, physiology, nutrition, herbal medicine on the planet. But I think we all agreed that, and Mike, you and I were talking about this last week, as you said, or last time rather, skin. We've just kind of gone through the summer season where a lot of dogs have had stuff come up for them. We're about to change seasons in Australia. And I've got a list here, as you guys know, a mile long of questions that I want to ask you, Narelle. But what's the story with skin? Like, why in 2022 are so many dogs and other animals presenting with skin issues? What the heck's going on?
Did you want to start with that one, Dr. Mike, or I can?
I'd love to, and probably what I'd love to start with is just a disclaimer that this is, this is an ongoing issue, and that for many of us in veterinary science, so my heritage is 30 years, and sometimes it's not hard to get stuck in some of the really quite superficial things, because there are definitely contact allergies, there are definitely dietary allergies, there are parasitic concerns. There's enough things happening at a very superficial level to, in some ways, account for the really quite disturbing clinical signs and disruption both to the pet and to the household, a real strain on that relationship. And so, this whole topic is much, much more than a physical topic. It hurts. It hurts quite deeply. But there's enough superficial evidence in some ways to satisfy the argument. We could say, you know what? It's the diet, it's the parasites, it's the seeds out on the grass, and we're done. And for decades, those have been my go-to. And really what I want to do is look a little deeper today, because it's definitely not the whole story. Narelle, over to you.
It absolutely is not the whole story. And I agree, it's so easy. I mean, I've had a lot of my dog clients contacting me in the last couple of months, with flare-ups in skin issues. So it's a particularly bad summer, I think, for that. But then as a naturopath, we're trained to really step back and look at the bigger picture of what's going on, overall. And so to me, when I think about, why are skin issues sort of becoming so prevalent, a big part of it, and it's never one thing, there's always, multiple factors contributing. But I think, our pets now are just under such a toxic burden. And I think that's coming in from, multiple different angles. But, it was really highlighted back in, 2008, the Environmental Working Group, which is in the US, they did like the first study of its kind. It was amazing. So they took all these blood and urine samples of domestic dogs and cats, and they found that they were contaminated with absolutely dozens of synthetic industrial chemicals, things like phthalates, perfluorochlorates, fire retardants, a lot of them, known carcinogens. And what's really sort of sad is that in our pets, that toxic level of those chemicals was at a much higher level than they were finding in humans. So if you think about like a 4-kilogram cat or, 10-kilogram dog having a higher chemical burden in their body than a 70-plus kilo human being.
Isn't that interesting?
Like that's absolutely going to impact their immune system. It's going to impact, their gut health. And, no doubt as we go through the show today, we'll dig into sort of how that downstream effect ultimately can impact skin health. That's sort of where it manifests. So, yeah, to me,
Where is that? Where is the cause? Where's the root cause of that toxic load, Narelle? I mean, is it the food we're giving our pets? Is it the water? Is it purely environmental? Are they eating something disgusting at the park that we don't know about?
Well, a bit of everything. Again, it's never one thing. Right. So in terms of, some of those main chemicals that they found in the blood and urine samples. So things like fire retardants come from, if someone's got a new home, they've got new furniture, they've got new carpets, a lot of those are protected with fire retardants. A lot of the phthalates are plastic softeners, so dog toys that come in from, overseas countries have a lot of toxic contaminants that our dogs are just chewing on and ingesting day in and day out. Teflon family.
I never thought of that, to be honest. And I must admit, I'm the worst offender. I'm a ridiculous dog toy buyer. So if I see a cute toy at one of the pet stores, generally I'll pick it up straight away. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's not that, you can't give your dog toys, but there's just that, it's about educating pet owners to, turn the packet over, have a read, where's it coming from, what claims are they making, do they say what the ingredients are, things like that. And in terms of, household chemicals, if we can choose less toxic household chemicals, pet owners really need to avoid those plug-in air fresheners and scented candles because, they produce a lot of volatile compounds that, it's not going to happen in one candle burning session, but, over time, if that's sort of part of your household routine, and remember, everything sort of falls down to ground level, which is where, our pets are hanging out on the carpet where everything is. So there's lots, and I can, and diet too. If you get me started on diet, I tend to not stop, but just to start the conversation on diet, we know that a lot of commercial kibbles in particular contain a lot of mycotoxins, which are quite detrimental to health. There can be a lot of contaminants. There have been so many instances over the years, that there was melamine scare back, well, not a scare, an incident, back in 2007, somewhere back there where thousands of dogs, died or were sick because of contaminated food. We know if we take it sort of another step down or deeper, we know that just the way that kibble is manufactured, when you're processing proteins and carbohydrates together at very high temperatures, and, Gabrielle, you'll probably be very familiar with this from the human health side of things, you're creating that Maillard reaction, which is creating, advanced glycation end products and acrylamide and all these toxic compounds that are known to create systemic inflammation. The research shows that in humans with psoriasis and, maybe not eczema, something else, or just atopic dermatitis.
Atopic dermatitis, which is so common in dogs, Mike, now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very, very difficult to treat, persistent, and a big impact.
And I mean, I'm going to say something controversial, and Narelle, forgive me in advance. Mike knows that I will anyway, but I mean, the orthodox medical toolkit with respect to atopic dermatitis and some of these protracted skin conditions, all that it has is symptomatic treatments. It doesn't have any kind of root cause treatments. Is that fair to say?
Agreed. There's really all you're doing is putting a lid on the response, and not even a very effective lid.
Yeah, I mean,
Michelle,
that's the thing. If a dog's...
Narelle, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, if a dog is consuming a very pro-inflammatory diet, and, with commercial kibbles too, they tend to be disproportionately high in omega-6 fatty acids. And, our animals absolutely need omega-6 fats, but not to the extent that the modern diet is providing them. And that has a very pro-inflammatory effect in the body. So you combine something like that, which comes from the corn and the soy, all those vegetable oils that are very common in kibbles, you combine that with, those metabolic effects from the advanced glycation end products and, that systemic inflammation. You can't just give them a drug and, hope to dampen that response over time, because it really is just a Band-Aid solution. You do have to go back to the source, look at the diet, look at the environment, and sort of start changing things up from, baseline.
So one of the challenges with a more natural, holistic approach to things, and I have this conversation a lot with people that I see on the human front, is it is a literal Pandora's box, right? So you open the lid on that thing, and then suddenly your first response is, holy crap, I've been doing, I put my family in danger, I put my dog in danger. What have I been doing all these years? Oh no. And it's very easy to feel, I think, for quote unquote normal people, overwhelmed, particularly in the sense of, say, household toxins and so on. We're a little bit off topic, but I think it's a question that you must get in clinic all the time. Okay, you've seen someone, there's possibly a systemic issue with the animal in terms of, or even the people in the household in terms of, okay, there's a lot of different contributing factors to your dog's issue. What does someone do? Like, how do they start the process? Because obviously they can't fix everything at once, right?
Yeah, that is, super challenging. And it doesn't have to be, a black or white, like complete overhaul of a lifestyle to get benefits from it. It's like, with diet, even small changes on a daily basis over time can lead to huge health benefits for human health and for our pet health. So I might tell people, what's manageable, what can you do now? And usually they're more than happy to do some tweaking to the diet. They may not go, I might want them to go do like a full raw diet, but they may be sort of hesitant to go to that extent. But just adding in, 20% raw food. Again, there was a study done. I'm not sure, Dr. Mike, if you've heard of the dog risk group from the University of Helsinki. They do a lot of they're doing a lot of great research into animal health and the role of sort of more natural approaches and a raw food diet. But they found that where was I going with that? They found that dogs fed a raw food diet, one, they had less incidence of atopy than dogs fed commercial kibble, but they found benefit from as little as 20% of the diet being fresh, whole foods and raw foods. So it didn't need to be all or nothing. So that's what I try and really get across to my pet parents. Even some change is going to have a positive benefit to your dog.
Yeah. And it's not about, and I think also we always stress, Mike and I, it's not about just, as you said quite rightly, not about black and white. So, what are we now? 11th of Feb, 12th of Feb, no more kibble, raw diet, and I think those it's like a diet, right? With yourself, New Year's Day rolls around and lose 20 kilos and it's going to happen in 2 weeks. It's ridiculous. It never sticks, right? So I think those incremental kind of gradual process changes are wonderful. I mean, and as practitioners, we know that disease happens incrementally, right? It doesn't generally, unless it's an acute injury, it's something that occurs over a protracted period of time, often from when the dog is in puppy stage. So similarly, to address the issue, it's not going to be an overnight fix typically.
No, and that's right. I tend to see, it's funny you mentioned New Year's resolutions, because I tend to see people about week 4 of January, because they've gone on their crash, fad diet, whatever it is they found on the internet, and then realized it's not sustainable, it's not working. And then so they, I get a phone call, hey, Narelle, help.
What can I do?
Yeah, what can I do that works?
Just to jump in there, one thing that I have found is to also ask the owners what's a simple step that they could make that might provide quite a strong visual cue. And it's a weird thing, but sometimes I talk with them about changing the dog's bedding, and to move away to move towards a natural fiber bedding. And we know that's only just going to be a very small part. But number one, every dog bed is usually an old bed, and so getting a new dog bed is a nice move. But it's also a visual cue to say, this is the first. We've taken a step here. We've taken a step here, and it's a move towards natural. And so then let's follow that up in the shampoos that we use, in the cleaning products we use around the bedding or kennels, in the diet that we're feeding. In our approach to parasite control, etc. That it's just a simple visual cue.
And I think
I like that,
I'd like to stress, I love that idea. I'd like to stress that I think ideologically, I don't think any of us are saying go all natural, abandon the orthodox. What we're saying is it's horses for courses, right? To use that old sort of chestnut. So my philosophy, and I know you guys share this, is the integrative approach is the way to go. So there are going to be some acute situations where a pharmaceutical preparation is exactly the right thing that a veterinarian or a naturopath should recommend. And then, Narelle, to your point earlier, you can then, once perhaps the symptoms are settled down, you can then begin the process of, okay, use skin and gut, for example. Do we start introducing probiotics? Do we start introducing maybe some topical flaxseed? Do we put flaxseed on the food? Do we try, introducing 20% raw? Is that kind of fair to say?
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, it's always about quality of life. So, people always will often assume that as a naturopath, I am anti, pharmaceutical medication, which is absolutely not the case, because, they have a role to play for sure. Yep. And they can, they're life-saving at times, and they can be a great bridge while pet owners are working on those other areas that are more sort of holistic and lifestyle related. So yeah, I think that's a great approach.
Okay, so I know that so we wanted to look into the causation or the etiology of skin conditions. And I know we've touched on inflammation, which I think is a big one. Break it down for someone who's not in the industry, someone who's not a clinician. What can we talk to as far as causation of skin conditions? So, Mike, you touched on environmental considerations. Narelle, you've touched on diet, bedding, household toxins, and so on. I know, and also I'm aware that there are some breeds in particular who are particularly prone to skin conditions.
Absolutely,
Dr. Mike, that's probably you. Yeah.
Yes, and anywhere where there's a skin fold issue, and that really just comes down to what's happening at the microscopic level, and that can be exacerbated by just hot and humid conditions. And so if you look through the incidence of skin conditions in pets and moved from south to north in Australia, I think per capita Queensland's got more veterinary dermatologists perhaps than anywhere else in the world. So there is a lot going on, and in some ways the etiology, while it's important to know how to address it in terms of next steps, but I think that in terms of the next level of us as pet owners understanding is to go below the surface, is because it's the things that are very visible, whether they be external parasites, plants in the garden that are causing concerns. I think we need to go lower to understand better. And Narelle, This is probably where I'd pass to you.
Yeah, and on that, something that's quite often overlooked, if we're sort of going to look at all the different sort of possible contributing factors, is stress and anxiety. We live in a very stressful world. Pet owners are stressed with everything that's been going on in the last couple of years, particularly whole sort of, routines, household routines have been sort of thrown into disarray with COVID over the last couple of years. I'm seeing more and more, I'm getting more and more dog clients come to me with, or their owners come to me with stress and anxiety issues, and they're looking for sort of a herbal remedy approach. But if we think about how that might impact, skin health as the focus of today, anything that compromises, digestion, immediately our dogs are going to be producing, when you get that, let me take a step back, when, our dogs are going through that, that adrenaline and that cortisol surge, if they're under chronic stress, that puts them in what's called a sympathetic dominant sort of nervous system state. So that fight or flight response, when our dogs aren't running from lions, but, when we're running from a lion, digestion is not priority in the body. So, digestion, it doesn't shut down completely, but, our dogs will be producing less gastric acid, less digestive enzymes, blood flow will be diverting from those digestive organs to the extremities. So as soon as we compromise our dog's ability, and I tend to talk in dogs because I have so many, it's okay. Probably applicable across all other animals. As soon as their digestion is compromised, they're not going to be able to be absorbing the nutrients to the extent that they should be from their food. So automatically, there's so many nutrients that we can talk about that are critical, in terms of skin health and coat health. So, that's one step, one factor. But then two, when those sort of that catecholamine pathway in the body is upregulated, again, our dogs are burning through a lot of essential nutrient cofactors, and if they're not coming into the diet adequately, B vitamins, magnesium, zinc, vitamin C,
fatty acids,
all of that, so people don't think necessarily how gut health, and then if gut health under extreme stress, we know the gut, those cells become more leaky. Everyone knows of sort of leaky gut. That predisposes dogs to developing, food allergies, or, increasing their sensitivity to environmental allergies.
That's interesting.
Everything is so interconnected.
Yeah, so it's
I probably haven't explained it well, but
no, you have. And I'm not. I think as a general principle, like, let's assume a level of intelligence with our audience. So we're not going to dumb this stuff down. But I think it's almost. I'm going to paraphrase just because, like, I had never actually thought of that gut-skin connection in dogs. Sorry, stress, gut, skin connection in dogs. Is that a fair summary? And that's fascinating because I'd always known, obviously the flight or fight response, the adrenal response, the cytokinin response, the gut permeability, but I'd never made the link, even in human practice, to that gut absorption, nutrient absorption angle. And also, I guess you're then upregulating the dog's kind of susceptibility to immune threats as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you said something
That's
I was going to respond to. That it is. I've forgotten what I was going to say. It'll come back to me. But I see it a lot in my human clients. That connection between when they have a stressful event and their flare-ups of eczema and psoriasis, for example.
Yes.
So that's really common for me to see. So it just makes sense to me that a similar sort of mechanism of action can be happening in our pets as well.
But you think about breed-specific considerations, right? Or even dog-specific considerations. There are some dogs who can eat rocks and still have a beautiful solid stool, have a great day, every single day. But those are the same dogs that are super chill, don't get stressed by thunder, just hang around like a teddy bear all day. I'm not even just talking about strictly just Labradors. I'm talking about there are other breeds who are like that, right? Whereas you take my bloody dog, who's a Hungarian Vizsla, she hears a cough downstairs and she's jumped to the other side of the room. So it's interesting. It's very interesting.
Now,
it does. No, go.
Sorry, I just wanted to jump in and say, I think each of us are thinking about our pets and then thinking, I wonder if that's going on here. I wonder if that's going on there. And what I'm thinking about is our listening audience, and I'm wondering what steps we can take towards some solution talking, because I know I'm hungry for it. Are we able to change gears? Because I want to know what to do with Gidget.
What can we do? What
can I do with Gidget?
Well, I guess it depends what you're currently doing. We need to sort of explore that whole background. But something else I see too that I think it's important for pet owners to be aware of. And, there's quite a movement now, and there's a lot more information available to pet owners about, some of the negative aspects of kibble, and they're trying to do the right thing and they have the best intentions, and they start making their own, raw food diets at home, which, that's fine. But as a clinician, I tend to see the nutritional gaps in what they're preparing, things like zinc and iodine, the omega-3s, all those critical skin health nutrients tend to sort of be lacking in home prepared diets.
Can I tell you a personal anecdote on this? So first and foremost, there is a time and a place for kibble, right? And there's been situations where, we were living in China for a long time, for 3 years actually. There was no chance that we were going to get anything close to a decent quality raw food meal for our dog. And she's like she's one of our kids. We wanted the best for her. So true story, I used to lug back 30-kilo bags of kibble in my luggage from Australia. Right. So that's point one. So I don't think any of us are saying, don't do kibble. It's just, there are alternatives, right? Secondly, my partner is, you guys know, very particular, very precise, even more of a dog maniac than I am, had a crack at doing raw. And to your point, Narelle, couldn't figure out the macro micronutrient stuff.
Yeah.
And so we ended up buying one of the high quality frozen raw brands. And so that's 85% of what Willow eats now.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach, and it tends to be what I recommend to my dog clients as well. If you do want to go down that raw path or any sort of a way, and look, with kibble, it's a spectrum. You can have really good quality kibble, and then you can have really bad kibble with a lot of artificial preservatives and colors and just, pretty toxic stuff in it. So, again, it's not an anti-kibble sentiment. It's like, let's pick the best kibble that we can afford.
Yeah.
And then what else can we add to boost that, in terms of fresh food potentially?
And just on that, I mean, what I'd like to do, guys, is Narelle, if you're willing, maybe in the show notes we can add in a few links to kibble brands that you guys do feel comfortable are okay, because it's not always, and I want to be careful when we say this, it's not always about spending $400 on kibble. There are some reasonably well priced brands that are still pretty good, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not about the price tag in a lot of instances. Yeah. And, something else, it's a bit off topic, but, educating pet owners to understand, the marketing hype that manufacturers use. So I always tell my clients, don't look at the front of the bag. Don't just ignore everything on the front of the bag, turn it over.
I like that.
Read the ingredients. I teach them about the guaranteed analysis as well, but I'm like, just read those ingredients. That's the first thing you need to do when you pick up a bag. So because a lot of the words used on a bag are not regulated, so that they're really quite meaningless. Yeah. But they're designed to make us feel a certain way.
And and I 100% agree with you. We're jumping around a little bit, but is there any, and again, we can include this in the show notes, but are there any independent resources that you would recommend, Narelle, that the average person can refer to start educating themselves?
I will, off the top of my head, you can't, like, I've got a lot of resources.
Your website.
That's one. And then wasn't sure if I could say that, but
yeah, of course you can.
But I'll definitely give information for the show notes that people can click on and follow through with a few different options. Yeah.
Cool. Mike, let's go back to your solutions request.
And what I was thinking of was these, like, I guess, three possible first steps. And the first was a foundation around education. And I guess probably what we're looking for here is, in some ways, I hope what we're providing is almost like a trusted advisor role, where instead of having to ask someone just to go online, to go Google and type in natural healthy dog, that we might be able to start with that education process and kind of like distill down. Here's a couple of places that you can start to inform yourself. The second was around what might be some practical first steps, just to that would probably be generally useful. And so, what you said before was really beautiful. You said, you know what? To know how to work with Gidget, first I've got to know specifically about Gidget, and so there's definitely a practitioner role in there. But there are also some really good first steps that we can all do that are going to be helpful. And then the third area was perhaps pointing towards a community. Where's there a community of people?
Great idea.
Where we can bounce ideas, hear other people's stories, and so that in that community that it's not going to be so far off towards one fringe that it's misinformed, but it's kind of like, where's there a community of thinking pet owners who understand their limitations and want to do better tomorrow than they did today. So yeah, I
Love
could
it.
just sort of see that as a couple of steps.
No, I love that. And also, Narelle and Mike, I would ask you both maybe for a case study, because often the way, I mean, as we teach clinicians, we'll often say, okay, this is, and obviously we don't need to name any dog names, but this was a particular dog with a skin condition that I saw. This was his or her presentation. This was the treatment protocol. These were the sort of the 3 month, the 1 month results, the 3 month results, or whatever. Would that be possible as well?
Right now?
Yeah, if one springs to mind, that'd be amazing. But if not, we can come back to it.
Well, I guess, even though I treat each dog client, individually, because, their circumstances are always so different. The first thing I'll always look at, one, the environment, which we've already touched on today, but then, I always bring it back to the gut. To me, it's about let's heal the gut, because, it's so cliche. Hippocrates said it how many thousand years ago that, all disease begins in the gut, but it's well and truly stood the test of time. Now, science is now catching up with that. What naturopaths and natural health practitioners have been saying, have known forever, and it's no different with our pets. So I will always be, and diet's part of healing the gut, but I will always be doing a more targeted sort of gut program, and that will usually involve, a few different supplements. But the key ingredients that we'd be looking at, prebiotics, probiotics, particularly probiotics from the spore-forming bacteria family, Bacillus Saccharomyces. They're both amazing, and we could do a whole show just on the health benefits of those bacteria. But slippery elm, all the demulcent herbs, you've got there.
And I think this is something that I get excited about, because I was obviously human health practitioner, but with a very, like you, a very specialized interest or passion for the animal side of things. Many of these ingredients you've spoken about now have specific research in animal species, particularly in dogs.
Oh, absolutely. In terms of like the Bacillus family of bacteria and Saccharomyces as a beneficial yeast, there is so much high quality research in both humans and, I've only really looked at the dog research, but really good information out there about, how we can use them in clinical practice to benefit, the gut, but then the downstream effect benefit the skin as well.
Yeah. Keep going. You were on a roll.
Okay. So I love herbs. I'm a trained herbalist. I'll use a lot of herbs, but my go-to nutrient when it comes to skin, it's got to be zinc. Like, you can't not have zinc in a gut healing protocol. And so, it's working to heal the inside of the dog, but, zinc is involved in every facet of tissue healing and wound healing. So it's sort of a must-have in my mind. Oops, sorry if you can hear dogs scratching at my door.
Would you supplement the zinc, or can you get it from your diet? Again, assume I know nothing. Where can I get this zinc from?
Look, I tend to recommend supplements when we need a therapeutic outcome. I just find that sometimes, from a diet perspective, they're just, usually it's owners just not being consistent with adding the certain foods that they need. Oysters and things like that are a great source of zinc, nuts and seeds as well. But I think, having a targeted supplement that we use for a certain course of time, so we know exactly what they're getting, we can monitor the results. I think that's my approach when it comes to particularly dealing with skin issues.
Our naturopathic approach always used to be, as you say, with the gut, begin in the gut, of course. But I think this concept, you remember the concept we were all taught in college, weed, seed, feed. Now that's now out of date, right? In my opinion, and I think probably in your practice as well. And it's not necessarily about that. I'm going to use a terrible terminology, but almost like that nuclear bomb with herbs to kind of so-called cleanse the gut anymore, is it? Where is the science and where is the thinking now? Particularly with respect to the microbiome science that we're seeing in animals.
Yeah, I must say I haven't I haven't followed that weed seed and feed approach for a lot of years. And look, I just find that, we can do it in a more gentle way without, because a lot of pet owners don't realize that just because something's natural doesn't mean it can't have a negative impact on sort of the resident microbiome. I mean, some of those herbs can be as powerful at wiping out beneficial bacteria as antibiotics. So, we tend to forget that. So I take a more gentle approach. So I'd rather clean up the diet, but by incorporating and increasing beneficial bacteria, probiotics, we can sort of help to switch that dysbiotic picture to a more of a balanced picture to support the dog, and then doing other things around that. So I think probiotics have a huge role to play in healing the gut.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Did you ask me something else?
Have we covered your list of 3 there?
Yeah, I really think so. And what I would love a listener's response from this to be just to pique their curiosity, but then just not to leave them hanging. So to say, well, what might be a really positive next step. And I think we can do that just through some notes, but also just through opening up this dialogue. And I love what you said. We've really got to go back to the head of the river to, if we're going to have if we're really going to have some long-lasting effects, and it's worth it. It's this topic is totally worth it. And sometimes as I talk with pet parents, and they, if I talk about something which seems a little challenging, one question I put them was, well, how's it working at present? And often it's not that great. So I just want to say, well, let's start here. And some of the things we've discussed today are not in the mainstream of conversation. So I think it's worth exploring. Really appreciate everything you said.
Well, just, before we wrap it up, while gut is my primary sort of target when I'm managing skin issues, there's also the immune system. So we can't ignore, the gut feeds into the immune system, but I think it's also, if a dog's suffering from an acute or chronic skin issue, to give that immune system a support. And mushrooms are phenomenal. So, my go-to, there's a lot of really good research around mushrooms. So, that would always be part of a treatment protocol as well. So, gut, immune system, stress.
Narelle, can you bring to mind a case study? Or am I taxing you over your lunch break too hard?
It depends if you wanted. I have had, so recently I had a dog with chronic itching and redness.
Perfect. Yeah.
So
perfect.
Sorry, there might be, I don't know how many products I'll mention, but
no, that's fine. This is not a anti-product conversation, right? If there's products that you love, by all means recommend them. By all means.
Yeah. So so I put them on a gut support powder, which again, slippery elm, curcumin, marshmallow, aloe vera,
lovely.
Those bacteria that we've already spoken about. So that was sort of the gut aspect of it. But I also love a product called, and you'll know this, Gabe, Palmatol ethanol amide. So we abbreviate it to P. And that's an amazing anti-inflammatory, antihistamine product. So it really works well to sort of down-regulate that histamine release from mast cells.
And that's working on the cannabinoid receptors, right, from what I understand?
Yeah, it's working on those same pathways, which is really great. So look, sometimes I usually tell my dog clients it can take, up to a month to really kick in. But one of my most recent case studies, they emailed me after a week. They said, oh my gosh, I can't believe, because they bought it. And I'm like, it's only been 5 days. How can it be having such an amazing result? But they're like, no, that's all we've sort of changed. And we've noticed a significant difference. So the gut support, the P for the histamine release. Yep. I always reduce, so histamine, if pet owners that are listening aren't aware, histamine is a major contributing factor to the redness and itching that our dogs experience. So, for humans, we tend to have most of our mast cells that release the histamine in our sinus cavity. So, we tend to sneeze a lot, runny nose, weepy eyes. But dogs, their mast cells tend to be lining more often the skin, those skin surfaces. So that, when they
really?
have a reaction, that histamine release is going to be happening closer to the skin. So they tend to get redness and itching of the skin more than the sinusy sort of manifestations. So I'll look at their diet, because a lot of people at the moment are crazy on fermented foods for dogs. And it's not to say that they're not beneficial, but if a dog's got, allergies.
Those foods are very high histamine, right?
Very high histamine. So, I'm always looking at the diet, what's high in histamine? Let's pull that out as well, just for a period of time. And usually it's the jerky treats, because, anything sort of dried and preserved, canned fish. I love canned sardines for dogs, but if we're trying to minimize
anything
that
that can
histamine,
is super high histamine. Yeah.
High histamine. So we did that with them. So you can see, there was a few different angles, and their dog was anxious as well. So I did a herbal blend that had things like withania in it, and some other really lovely sort of anti-anxiety herbs as well. But that took a couple of months, but they got a significant reduction, so with the gut treatment, the dietary changes, and sort of targeting the stress and anxiety picture side of things as well. It doesn't always work out so beautifully or so quickly.
No.
Skin issues are notorious for being difficult to manage.
And I think, and Mike, I'd love your comments as well as people in clinic. Here's the dirty, rotten secret of clinical practice. Sometimes you're just trying something, and you have to, as the pet parent, you've got to be patient with your clinician and your animal to see if that treatment protocol is going to give you the result.
Absolutely agree, and I love it when Narelle said, pretty much any change in this space, I'm saying 3 weeks minimum until we expect to see some change. And so it's got to be patient.
Yeah.
And there's a conversation that we'll often have, which is to say, remember, this was an issue 3 summers ago, 2 summers ago, last summer, this summer.
Yeah. This
is going to be an issue for the rest of Gidget's life unless we do something about it. And it's so it's going to take us. This is going to take some time and an ongoing conversation. So that's.
But I think the and I'm sure you guys do this. The wise clinician will say, Mrs. Smith, we're going to give this a go. The science does support what we're doing here, but Gidget, her microbiome is unique, right? So the probiotics we're trying, there's a really good chance they're going to give the effect that we hope for, but there's a small chance they won't. And it's important, I guess, for us to let people know not to lose hope when they try these type of treatments, because it may not be that particular treatment that gives the result you want. It might be the one we try next or the one we try after that, particularly with these systemic sort of conditions that, as you say, might come every single year.
Yeah. And look, a conversation I have with some dogs, because I get clients with, rescue dogs, for example, and they don't know the background of that dog. And, we know from the human research that what happens to that, in utero can absolutely affect that dog's microbiome.
The epigenetics of it all.
For the rest of their life. So, unfortunately, I do tell some clients that this may be something we just need to manage as best we can, because we don't know, where your dogs come from. We don't know what their mother, what their stress or diet was, or what they were exposed to. So we don't know how that dog started in life. It could have, had a terrible start. And, so that's a really important consideration. And it's hard for pet owners to hear that in some instances, but a lot of times, surprisingly, when you say that to them, they sort of go, that makes sense.
Yeah.
We always had a gut feeling that there was something deeper sort of going on here, because we've tried literally everything.
Yeah.
So that's always another angle. It never ends, like the possibilities of what might be contributing to skin issues.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, we always, sorry, I'm rabbiting on a lot, but we always hope for that kind of home run. Yep. You came in 3 weeks ago, and Mike, to your story, you're sorted now. Unfortunately, sometimes it is a reduction of symptoms, or it is a reduction of the suffering of the animal, not necessarily a complete kind of fix, quote unquote.
I agree.
Yeah, and even just reducing the threshold, because again, with humans and dogs, we have a threshold beyond which, symptoms sort of manifest. And for some dogs, I'll say to the owner, okay, when you bring your dog inside, because environmental allergens are far more prevalent than food allergies, like true food allergies. Like everyone puts their dog on an elimination diet, which isn't harmful if done well. But, I think the research showed that 0.2% of dogs actually had a true food allergy. And most of the time it's environmental. So I'll say, when you bring your dog inside, wipe them down with a damp cloth, put their paws in a solution of, whether I give them an apple cider vinegar mix or a betadine mix, depends on the dog, but, at least remove those pollens and those antigens to sort of help reduce that burden on their body as well. So a lot of, there's things that they can do topically as well as internally. So it's a bit, again, it's a bit of everything.
It's amazing. We're coming up to the hour, you guys, and Narelle, I really want to respect your time, and Mike, and yours, of course, Mike. I've been blown away. I've learned stuff today that I didn't know, which is phenomenal. So I think I would request that this is episode 1 of a few that we do with you, Narelle. I think there's a treasure trove in your mind that we would benefit from learning more from. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. As long as I got things out in a partly sensical manner, we're doing well. So.
You did.
No, that was a really rich experience, Narelle, and thanks. And the combination of insight and passion, that's a lovely combination. And we heard that both of those things from you. So thanks so much.
I am very passionate and love to be back if you will have me. So thank you.
We'd be delighted. And please send us all of your links. Can people find you on, we'll add these links to the show notes, of course, but what's the best place online on social media to find you?
So my clinic website is naturalhealthandnutrition.com.au. So people can go there and find me that way, or just email me hello at naturalhealthandnutrition.com.au. And I must say, I've just closed my books to human clients at the moment. I've got my fill of human clients, so my books are only open to new dog clients at the moment.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. And thank you. Mike, I reckon we can both agree, we'll definitely have Narelle back on.
Love that.
And I think, skin, obviously, excuse the pun, we've only scratched the surface.
And that's a wrap.
Cut. Wonderful. This has been A Modern Animal. I'm Gabe Pereira. Dr. Mike Woodrow, thank you so much. Narelle Cooke, thank you so much for your time. Really look forward to our next conversation.